Up, Mortgage Coach community, Dave Savage here. Welcome to our Friday Mastermind. Robert, if you can confirm that we're also broadcasting live on Facebook.
You are, Dave.
Okay, I don't see that little thing that I usually see on my screen, so if you could just double check that. But all right, guys, so let's get rocking. We've got a special Friday Mastermind. You know, I was about to say it's outside the normal. But the thing is, on Friday, it's not normal. Like, we do different things, different days. One thing that's super cool about today is I have my wingman, Todd Bookspan. What's up, brother?
You know, I am super excited, as always, to be with you on a Friday, but particularly excited for today. It's and you're super nice looking today with the Super Nice Club shirt on. Might as well give it a plug.
Yeah, plug to Super Nice Club. If you guys want to join the club. And all the club is that if you like it on social media, Instagram, Facebook, if you rep it with a hat or a shirt, be 10% nicer. Like, if you're mean and you're 10% nicer, you can be in the club. If you're already super nice then you've got to be even nicer. If anybody does want to buy a hat or a shirt, get 15% off. Put in Super Nice Savage as the discount code.
Super Nice Savage.
Yeah, Super Nice Savage. And I've got no financial interest. Just I like the story. I like the shirt, and the founder Todd Bookspan. I love. He's a great dude.
Founder, the other Todd. Right, wrong Todd.
Yeah. Todd Bookspan has received a number of text messages where it's like, "Oh, wrong Todd." All right, guys. So before we bring in Keith Collins, which is our special guest today, what's up, Keith?
What's going on, guys? How are you?
We're pumped to have you, dude. So before we bring him in and focus the call on him, I wanted to just shine a light on a few things that I want you all to know about. I want to make sure you're in the know. One, we have published an 8-minute highlight of my 25-minute interview with Donald Miller in IGTV. And the thing I like about IGTV is it's just super easy to consume. Everything's under 10 minutes, and it just kind of goes from one to the other. So, I mean, we've got like over 10 videos now in the Mortgage Coach IG channel. Check it out. And they're all highlights. So whether it was a 1-hour interview, a 20-minute interview, a 15-minute interview, you've got like a 6 to 9 minute highlight of that. So Donald Miller was pushed. Jeremy Forcier was pushed. So Jeremy's famous 5 questions, it's in IGTV now. And I would just push you guys and remind you, this is worth watching before a meeting, or like listening to, get ready to go meet with a realtor. You want to get a little reminder, you want to get pumped by J-Force, check it out. It's in IGTV, published and edited by Sid Savage. All right. Also, I did an interview yesterday that is just awesome. I love this interview because I interviewed a top producer, closed 40 loans last month, so total baller. But he's in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you know, and I just love the conversation. Like, when I asked him why he uses Mortgage Coach, it's just like he has this belief that through transparency, I'm better serving my client and I'm going to be more effective and efficient. So it's like all the time I hear people in different markets go, "Oh, my borrowers, they don't need the total cost. They don't want the total cost. They just want rate, payment, closing costs." And this guy just makes a really good case that, you know what, everybody at every demographic, at every purchase price, they want transparency. They want value. They want options. Great interview. Also, he does a really cool job because most of his people come into his office. So he really walks through his kind of high touch, high tech experience. And even like, they come in, they leave, he puts a video on it. And again, just a leader that I think you all need to check out. Last reminder, before we bring in Keith, I published, I don't see it right here in my thread, but I published an article with Kristen Messerly yesterday. And again, my goal, and this theme will be going on for a long time, around we got to be the guide, not the hero. And I tried to pull what my 3 takeaways were from my Donald Miller interview. I'll pull that up and show it at some point in a minute, but it's at the top of our Facebook group. And I just want you guys to see it, study it, reference it, and guys, let's all get better at marketing. So with that said, Todd Bookspan had the vision of bringing in Keith. I want him to, bring in Keith with, why did you invite Keith to today's call? And then let's have a mastermind, guys.
All right. So I'm going to give one quick plug for my buddy and coach and mentor, Bill Hart, his All In podcast, because he just released the latest one with yours truly on it. But it's not about me. I would just say if Bill's ever given you any value in this group or outside of this group, go to wherever you watch podcasts and subscribe, and then leave a 5-star review, right? I mean, he's really trying to get guests that are way better than me on there. And the way to do that is to have more downloads. And if you guys can jump on there and do that, that'd be a great favor to me to pay back someone who's added so much value here. All right.
Todd, wait, before I've got to pile onto that. So one more pile on for me is totally agree. I mean, there's no one that's delivered more consistent value to the mortgage coach community in a way that's public. You guys know what Bill does publicly, but there's a lot of things that he does that people don't ever know about, whether it's just text messages to me, it's introductions to leaders. I mean, he does a lot of things that people never see that make him a very important, prominent leader in our community. So do it for Bill. But here's the real deal. Yeah, do it for Bill.
Do it for Bill. That's a new one, man. We're going to run with that. Do it for Bill.
Okay. So Bill, I want to see a hashtag. I just created a Bill Hart meme.
He has to. That's his new hashtag. He has to run with that. Do it for Bill.
Okay, hashtag do it for Bill. But here's the real deal. Of all the principles that I have found in the most successful loan officers I've ever interviewed, some time block, some don't. Some use Mortgage Coach, 34% do, some don't. It's like there's a lot of ways being successful, but I've never interviewed a baller, a super successful person that wasn't like all in. I just haven't met that person. I mean, maybe I'll meet that person someday that's like accidentally killing it, but they're all in. And so watch these interviews because everybody he's interviewing is all in, and it's inspirational. It just gets you more all in. So back to you, Todd.
Well, I love it. And, it'll be fun to introduce Keith now because Keith is one of his clients as well. And I think most people know he was my first coach and I think guided me to success in the mortgage industry. But I always really give him credit for making me a whole lot better human being. And I know that that's odd to say, but, a great coach does that. And, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that Bill had me do early on, I always kind of viewed like he had that fishing hook in the back of my neck. And every time I was getting way ahead of myself, like distracted, oh, look, there's a bird. Bill kind of reeled me in and said, hey, okay, this is your next step. And one of the things that he suggested was that I go to sales mastery. And one of the first sales masteries I went to, I was just reminiscing with my buddy who got me in the mortgage business the night before last. One of my first sales masteries, John Maxwell was there, and he was the kind of the co-host along with Todd Duncan. And it was a super impactful event on me. And I've been a huge fan of John Maxwell's ever since. I got a lot of books. Oftentimes you guys ask me, what's up on my bookshelf. And I've got a John Maxwell section up there of all of his books, because I don't think there's anyone who speaks into leadership more than John. And he's got so many other principles is the word that Keith wants to use. So Keith had just gotten back from a trip to Costa Rica where he got to hang out with John. Wasn't a mortgage event, so I'll let him talk about what he was down there to do. And when I saw him post on that, I'm like, gosh, you know what? Here he is. He's a leader in our mortgage coach community. He's a baller as a mortgage producer and a mortgage leader within his organization. And now he's also had this opportunity to spend time down in Costa Rica, Pura Vida. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce Keith and let him start talking about kind of his takeaways from being down there in Costa Rica with none other than John Maxwell.
Yeah, guys, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, man. Like this was like a week and I'm a week and a half into being back into, regular life from that trip. And so I appreciate this because it forced me to really take an in-depth review of it. That was on the list to go back and kind of gather my takeaways, but being on this call kind of forced me to really review it significantly last night and this morning, which is awesome. But man, it was cool, right? So like people have asked me a lot, like, what are you doing for, a day and a half with John Maxwell in Costa Rica? And so I just want to share kind of like how we were there and then really what we were doing. So, cause the thing is, like, you can go to a John Maxwell seminar, right? And take bullet points. But I think a lot of the stuff that I gathered was actually seeing the business aspect of what John was doing and really how he's kind of just leading into what he does really well, which is leadership, influence, and evangelism, which was awesome. So, like why we're there. So Casey, our CEO, 2018, he won the Maxwell Leadership Influencer of the Year award. And what comes with that is a mentorship with John Maxwell for a year, like personal one-on-one mentorship, which is pretty awesome. So through that, like they became friends, figure out that, our company and what Maxwell's doing is really aligned. And we partnered with the Maxwell Foundation to, with Maxwell's goal is to transform a country through leadership. So getting the leaders in the country to really dive into values-based leadership fundamentals. So he's down there trying to get people to jump into basically round tables associated with leadership to change the country. So he was down there for a day and a half, spoke in front of 6,000 people, 3 different times in San Jose, Costa Rica. And we got to just kind of be a fly in the wall and follow him and his people around for a day and a half as he went out and kind of spoke leadership to people in Costa Rica. So it was pretty awesome.
So I think it's just pretty incredible because, I don't know that people know John's backstory, right? He was a pastor and led a big church. And, I find that oftentimes people think, oh, well, I don't want to, he's a religious guy, I can't follow him. But really what's happened is, you said, he's come out as one of the true leadership thought leaders in the world. And that's his primary, thing that he puts out there, but he obviously goes out there to transform a country. I mean, that's just like a little thing, right? Not like, oh, I'm going to make a borrower have a better day and a better loan. Like he's transforming a country. So walk through, you kind of laid out a couple of the principles that he had said when we were trading messages back and forth. I mean, what were your big takeaways?
Yeah. So I had a couple. So, we're in, South American or Central America, right? But these are countries that speak Spanish as their primary language, right? They don't speak English, and John doesn't speak Spanish. So this was kind of one of my takeaways. I was sitting at breakfast with him, and I asked him, I was like, "Hey, John, so do you think that your influence would be greater if you spoke the spoken language? Like, would the message be received better?" And he said, "Yeah, probably, but the problem is that's not my strength." Right? Like I'm not a guy that can pick up a guitar and listen to music and play a song, nor am I a guy that really is great at learning multiple languages. And he hit me with, he really believes, I really believe that you can only increase your ability by 2 points, right? So if you're a 3 or a 4 in an area, the best you're going to be is a 4 or a 5. So what I want to focus on is the areas that I'm 7 and 8 so that I could be 9s and 10s. And through that, I'm going to have the most influence because I'm going to be living in what brings me the most joy and where I can make the most impact. And so for me, like that, the way that he articulated that, and I think it's really prevalent in the mortgage industry because often we try to, put $200 an hour employees in $30 an hour jobs and to really focus, you know what I mean? Like the industry does a really good job of that. And so to really focus on not like where you're weak, but where you're not strong and find the people that are strong in that area and then go lean in and like be all in where you really show up best. That for me was huge. And I've really reflected on that. Take a lot of time thinking like who is Keith really and where am I best? And then how do I constantly just focus on developing those things?
No, and I love that. I mean, it's, one of the things as I started studying productivity is they all the productivity thought leaders typically say there's 3 vital functions that anyone has, right? So this group, most of started out as our Darren Hardy Insane Productivity with Mortgage Coach group. And he always talks about those vital fews. That's why I made it into the Win by Noon Planner. What are your top 3? Like, what are those things you're great at? Kind of reminds me a little bit of Marcus Buckingham. For those of you who heard of Strength Finder, he sold that off to Gallup now. But I think it's, I just love his take on it because, ultimately I'm thinking 2 points. Like, all right, help me understand that and to say, hey, so much more value going to a 9 or 10 from a 7 or 8 than going to a 5 or 6 from a 3 or 4. And I think we all fall in that category. So when you're thinking now that you're going to coach your loan officers on that, where are you going to be looking for? You said, hey, let's keep these $200 producers out of $30 an hour jobs. How are you going to coach them to identify those top activities?
I mean, we got to figure out where they're really good, right? I think in the mortgage industry, you have inside loan officers and outside loan officers, and then sometimes we get really stuck in the middle. So I think that's what big thing for LOs is to figure out like where you're really good. Are you good behind the desk, or are you good out in the field? And I think that's 2. If you look at most top producing loan officers, that's really where we're at, right? There isn't a lot of people that exist really well in the center. And so figuring that out, like where are you best, and then building a team around your weaknesses, if you will, right? So that you can focus in on your strengths. I think the other thing, and for me, one of my biggest takeaways from it was, and I talked about like the business aspect of John Maxwell. So we were there, his CEO was there, his creator of content was there, his assistant, and then a couple other people to just make sure that everything goes off without a hitch. And I'm talking with these people, and like, they've all been with him for like 20, 25 years. And it was really interesting to see how amazing these people were that were around John. And so, looking at and seeing that, like the sign of the leader is not necessarily the leader, but the quality of the individual is willing to follow that leader, right? I think that's the great sign of the leader. And so what he's been able to do, and he talks about his leadership lid, is there's a leadership lid that we all have. And when the leader can raise that lid up, then everybody else can then come up with them. So in an organization, the ability for the organization to grow and improve is directly related to the growth of that individual leader, because that allows everybody else to rise up. And so for me, that was like my big takeaway, is that like when I'm looking around, take a look at who's hanging around you and how you're bringing those people up, which was awesome.
Well, and I think that's a huge for all of us, right? So think about that, whether you're in a branch manager or regional manager role like Keith is, or you're just an originator who's got, maybe a loan officer assistant, even if it's a shared assistant or your loan processor. How can you make them, how can you bring them up? How can you make them respect and admire you and help raise up that lid that Keith is talking about? Because ultimately in the end, I always think it's a great sign of a leader. My wife runs operations for our team, and, our operations team, the average, tenure is probably 7-8 years, which speaks to her leadership. And so I love hearing that, because imagine having someone who's an assistant who probably at some point has gotten enough from John that she can outgrow that role, but she's still there because he's continuing to make it a challenge for him or her. He's continuing to add, value in that role. So I think that's a great reminder. What else, like when you reviewed your notes, was there anything else that came back unexpected that you're like, oh gosh, I totally didn't catch that the first time through?
Yeah. So like, a couple of things. So he talked about managing. I'm here. So managing versus leading. So management is dealing with things that they are, whereas leadership is anticipating what is to come. And leaders. So right now leaders see more, but he said is in 2020, leaders see it before everybody else. So taking time to really reflect on where the business is going. I think a lot of times we think about, or we kind of merge leadership and management together. And he said it's two separate things. Again, management is dealing with things that they are, whereas leading is leading people. And then the leader always goes first. And what he means by that is, am I using my gift to benefit me, or am I using my gift to benefit others? And I think leadership is one of those things that I didn't really focus on a lot, right? Is that, when you're in a leadership position, are we really taking a lot of time daily to focus on how we can become a better leader in the mortgage industry? So I think a lot of times in the mortgage industry, we're watching calls like this, right? And we're looking at like, how do I go get more leads, or, what's the new technology or process, or, how am I better at Facebook advertising? But at the end of the day, like we're leading, and whether you're a team of 1 or a team of 20, you're leading your customer in that process. And so leadership principles, I think, are applicable to every aspect of the mortgage industry. And for me, it was one of those things, like I said, that I really hadn't focused on, is how can I be a better leader with my team? How can I be a better leader with my realtor partners, my processors, my underwriters, right? The support staff, everybody involved. I think often we don't think of ourselves as leaders in the industry, especially if we're only, the mortgage broker that's by theirself working from their home. We're leading people, and we need to be better at it.
Yeah, I love that. So is there any like favorite of Maxwell's books you have? I think that's the overwhelming part. He's got so many great books. Is there one that you would recommend for someone who's unfamiliar with John to start with?
I think it's the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I think it's probably, that's one of the 3 top bestsellers. I think that's a really good one, because it does give you kind of 21 bullet points to leadership that like you can digest and then go use regularly. I like that one a lot.
No, that's probably the one that stands out the most to me, but I've just found value in all of them. He does such a good job because he puts a number on everything, right? So it's like, right. Hey, this is what I need to know. He names stuff, Yeah. Again, all this kind of blends in with the story brand stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about as we keep going on this, on this call. I do want to point out to all of you who are there, right? We're heading into the end of the year. It's time for review and reflection. And I think the thing that I love that you said, Keith, was you said, this forced me to do an in-depth review to look at my takeaways. So think about that. Keith just said it. We're all listening to a lot of these calls. And my question always is for you is, are you actually implementing anything? Are you actually executing on what you're hearing? And you've got to schedule that time to do it. I would tell you that when Bill was my coach, I always had accountability around a few things each quarter, typically a couple personal and a couple business, but 100% of the time on time, right? Working on my business was on there, right? When I would go to Sales Mastery, right? He had me schedule a lot of time to digest those ideas. So when you hear someone like Keith say, hey, this forced me to do that, right? Because he's busy, he's back. He was out of the office. So he's got to get caught back up. But I would encourage you guys, if you're going to invest the time in a call like this or any other call, then make sure that you schedule that time later in writing on your calendar, whether it's written or electronic, that you actually go ahead and do that and make it, make a commitment to that, because that's the way, I think that you're going to grow. And so as a leader, I think it's really critical that you do that. And I think even as a producer, right, you have ideas you want to do for 2020. And so my question for you is what are those ideas and how are you going to implement them? And if you don't actually spend the time now as we roll into this last, 20 days or something like that of 2020 where you get to work, I think it's really critical. Any thoughts on that, Keith?
Yeah, what's always been great for me is the challenge with real estate is it's a reactionary business, right? And so, and I love a couple of things. The win by noon, which is a great just philosophy to get everything done before noon so that you can actually react to the rest of the day. Because and you have to find the times where you can be proactive. And I find, between, let's say, 6 to 9 o'clock, I can get a tremendous amount of work done because people aren't bugging me for stuff, and I'm allowed to be proactive in that time. So when you're looking at your schedule, I actually have time to be proactive and time to react. So I actually book time in the afternoon to just let the day be what the day is going to be. But one of the things that worked for me, and I think Bill actually turned me on this, is just the idea of first Fridays. So what I do is I take the first Friday of the month, I block the whole day out. I've got a place locally here in town that does a great breakfast, does a great lunch. Often I'll have breakfast and lunch there, but it's got a great view, so it's inspirational. But I shut it down and I just reflect on the month previous and then the month ahead of me. And I mean, it rolls right off the tongue. First Fridays, I talk to a lot of people about it. Everybody knows that I do it. That's the other thing I think is when you are scheduling time like that, right? There are people in your life that have the opportunity to pull at you, right? Whether it's your spouse or your loan partner. You got to let them know the importance of these times. The why behind it, and also the when, so that they understand, hey, look, I got to protect Keith first Fridays because it's super important that he takes the time to figure out where our business is going from there. So for me, with that, when you're talking about spending time on the business, first Fridays for me has always been great.
Gosh, I love that idea. So think about it, right? That's Keith unplugging. He's explained to the people around him why it's important, including his partners and his spouse and his team members. What do you say to the people who are going, there's just no way I can do that? Like, there's just no possible way I can unplug for a day. How would you encourage them to do it?
I mean, that's just I hate to say it, man, people might get mad at me, but that's an excuse, right? Like if you proactively set the time up ahead and let people know, like, go to this. So I'll set an appointment with the realtor, and the realtor wants to set the appointment at 10 o'clock, 10:30, let's just say. And it happens to be on Tuesday or Thursday, which is my times to prospect. Now let them know, like, hey, I'm a prospecting loan officer, so I would love to meet with you, but unfortunately I actually take 10 to 12 Tuesday and Thursday to prospect. Is there a time that we can schedule outside of that? Because I need to be prospecting for my current realtor partners. Like, so when you have that, or like I do date night on Wednesday night. So when I'm meeting with a customer and they want to meet on Wednesday, I just let them know, like, hey, I do date night every Wednesday night. That's something that I have to protect. And I make a joke about it. Like, my wife will just fire me if I miss it. So, and they're always cool with it. I think the problem is that we have this fear mentality associated with blocking something out on our schedule because you have fear of missing out. Like, somebody's going to be upset, or I'm going to miss the lead, or the agent's not going to get it. And you know what, if they do, like, oh, well, it's once we realize how important it is to take this time to focus on your business, you'll understand that the individual opportunity that comes up that you think is really important really isn't that important. Everybody, I mean, Josh Meadow, you talk about it all the time. He's the one that I think he's the one that came up with the term on time. I heard him talk about that at a Sales Mastery years ago. He's probably one of the busiest originators out there. and he does on time daily. So to say that you can't do it, I think is an excuse.
Yeah, you know what? I love that you called it out, because my whole goal on these calls is not to be a jerk, and so then it's great when someone else says that.
Let me be the jerk. I appreciate that.
Okay, I appreciate that, but it is true, right? It's I always say what gets scheduled gets done. So when you schedule those things, if you're truly committed to it, right, the challenge always is how do you protect yourself from it? So we've talked about it here before with Josh. For Josh to protect his prospecting time, all of their phones, so their cell phones, which I would normally pull out of my pocket, but I'm recording from it today, all their cell phones and their desk phones are forwarded to the receptionist. So Josh is protecting himself from himself. So if someone calls, that he's not tempted to actually pick up the phone during that time, because that is their outbound prospecting time. And so oftentimes you have to protect yourself. I love the fact that you say, hey, I go sit in a restaurant where, they serve breakfast and lunch. And some people are like, well, I can't go sit in a restaurant for 3 hours. Heck yeah, you can. Just tip them well, right? They don't care.
Right.
They're happy to have you there. Be nice, right? Be part of the super nice club and add some value there. But I think that's, again, if there's probably a theme that we should carry in this group, right? We're going to certainly carry story brand. Dave's already said it a couple of times through next year. But I think it's this idea of being proactive around protecting your time to plan and be better at your job, right? So it's protecting your time to prospect, like you said. I mean, my script always for that is, hey, I've got a commitment at that time. I love that you take it a step further and say what that commitment is. That my commitment is to my wife, my commitment is to my prospecting, because, certainly people respect that. I don't think anyone said, hey, well, meet with me instead of take your wife out on date night, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. And I think kind of going back to that, back to John Maxwell's, one of the things he did talk about is leadership of the past and leadership of the present. Leadership of the past in terms of goal planning was, you had your long-term goal or long-term vision for your organization. And that might have been a 10-year strategy. And then you had your midterm goal, which might have been a 5-year strategy. And then you had a short-term goal, which might be like a 2-year strategy. That is no more. And in present day, we look kind of quarter to quarter and we do 90-day sprints. So what used to be like a 10-year strategy, which is your long-term strategy, might be like 2, right? Because things are going to change so rapidly, especially in our business. And so, you have to take time to sit down and plan and figure out where things are going, especially now, because you can't just, I think like I teach a goal planning class, right? Or a business planning class, the 1-page business plan from Building Champions. And it's like, I think often we do a business plan, we check a box, and then we throw it in a drawer and we don't look at it again because, we've done what we're supposed to do. But we have to take that time to constantly review and reflect where we're going and what's changing.
I love that. I'm laughing because I literally have my plan right here that I started, right? So I do 2 of them. I do one for my mortgage team that I, set vision for and lead. And then I'm doing one for Win by Noon. And so I will give it a plug. It's not scheduled yet. It'll be scheduled by the end of the day tomorrow, but I'm going to be doing a couple of business planning webinars. So I'll make sure I post it here in the group so that you guys can jump on, but it'll just be at winbynoon.com/calendar where I'll really dig into, I'll do 2 different types of webinars. One will be on just how to plan for yourself for next year. And then I'm also going to do how to plan with your partners for next year, because that's really was my unique value proposition when I was originating. Was I did these quarterly sprints that Keith just mentioned with my realtors using the Building Champions 1-page business planning tool, which if you ping Bill Hart, he's happy to connect you with that. I just saw him do a post on it in the last month. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's really the key, because things are changing so fast, right? What does the next 90 days look like? Is pretty huge if you're not taking the time again to look at it. And, I've already got what my weeks look like next year, when I'm dialing, right? I do the same thing I teach you guys to do. I got the Friday call schedule in here. I got my Monday afternoon sync up with Mr. Dave Savage right there, who's been super quiet. Dave, are you going to come in and ask Keith any questions?
Yeah, man. I was just letting you guys roll. I thought you guys had it.
I almost forgot about you.
Yeah, you had a great conversation. So I wanted to wait for a natural opening. So I do have a couple notes that I took, but I want to remind the mortgage coach community, this is a mastermind. So if you've got a question for Keith, post it below. I will be monitoring both Zoom and Facebook, and I'll bring it in. And if you just got a takeaway, like a quote that Keith said or something that either one of us said, put it down below, guys. Let's mastermind. And even if you're watching the recording. So here are the 3 or 4 things I wrote down, and then I have a question for Keith. You notice how Keith opened this up with, thank you guys for having me, because knowing that I had to get prepared for this meeting and present what I learned it better. And so I thought that's a great reminder for everybody that through leadership, you actually become better skilled at whatever the things that you do are. So I'd push everybody watching this, if you have a team, what can you lead? What can you take that you've learned in the past 30 days and give a briefing to your team? Let's say you're a new loan officer and you don't have a team, you have a family. Like, what have you learned? I'm not saying give a briefing to your family. That might be a little tone deaf, but how do we take what we learn and then through leadership, teach it? Because that's how we get better. So Keith, that was a big takeaway for me. Thank you for that, brother. Obviously the theme of amplify your genius zone. I never heard that story the way he said it. It's like I'll never forget that story that you just told. And that really, put focus on genius zone. Although I got a different takeaway that just focus on your genius zone. My takeaway was what courage it takes. Like, if anybody's ever traveled in another country, that, it's awkward. It's not easy. So imagine, okay, I'm going to go and be a speaker. Now, John Maxwell does have a team. He is the man. So it's not like all of us, but man, that takes a lot of courage to go, you know what? I'm not perfect. I know that if I spoke the language, I would have more influence, like duh. But you know what? I'm still doing it. Like I think so many leaders don't lead because they don't think they're good enough, or they're like, yeah, but if I spoke the language, yeah, but if I was better at this. So like, have the courage to lead. Just get out there and do it, even if you don't speak the language, which that would be a big thing to overcome. I think most leaders wouldn't do that. They'd stay in their comfort zone. They'd stay in their country. But his mission is bigger than that. So he has the courage, and he did it. So yeah, leaders have courage. That another takeaway I wrote down. Like, I've always respected John for his values, for what an incredibly polished speaker he is. But I mean, Todd, you called it out. He is a really good marketer. I mean, like, the headlines of his books. If you go through and you look at the chapters, I mean, you are looking at one of the master marketers of the 21st century. Like, there's a lot of good speakers, a lot of people with good ideas, and I'm not saying that John's only John because of his marketing skills, but oh my God, man, he is a master marketer. Study his headlines and like this whole theme of, hey, we're teaching you to be black belts in advice. We want to teach you to be a black belt in marketing yourself as an advisor. How do you market yourself one-to-many? How do you market yourself one-to-one? How do you show up on Facebook, Instagram, and social? And John is just a great example. Anybody who's watching this, I would go back and look at his book to grow as a leader, but I'd go back and look at his content to grow as a marketer. And then my one question for you, Keith, and then I'll let you guys get back after it. Although this may not be an easy question for you, we'll see. Kind of in the spirit of start and stop, is there anything that you took away where you're like, you know what, I'm going to stop doing X, or I'm going to do X a little less? And what are you going to start doing? What aren't you doing as a leader that coming out of this experience with John, you're like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and you've calendared it or you've committed to it? Anything come to mind?
Being more intentional with my personal growth, in that, before I would go to events and conferences to see like, oh, I like the title and I'm sure I could get some stuff out of it. But if it's not directly associated with enhancing what I am great at, it's not even on the register. So for me, I think that would be one of the big things, is I'm really revamping where I'm going to be investing in myself in 2020. And actually I'm eliminating some of the other things that I kind of previously thought that I was going to go do, because I really it really made me look back and figure out like, and I asked some people around me too, like, give me 3 of my, my best traits. So I asked some of the people in my life. I asked my wife, I asked my direct leader, some of the people I work in the team, and I took time to think about it. And then, so for me, again, just what I'm going to be consuming, I'm eliminating anything that's not associated with my 3 traits.
What do you mind? I mean, maybe it's personal, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What are your 3 traits?
So I think contagious energy is one of those things where I can come into a room, I have a ton of energy. I'm the like ADD guy that's running around the office, hopping through the office, yelling at people. And I mean, like, so that's me, right? It's contagious energy is something that I think people want to be around. I believe influence is the other thing that I'm really good at. And then for me, like swimming upstream. So I'm a tester. I constantly test things. And I also, like I always say, go where people aren't. And so I think because that's where I find open spaces and opportunity. And so for me, constantly testing the things in my business and looking for those wide open spaces that people aren't marketing to.
I like that. So contagious energy, influence and leadership, and innovation. You know, you want to go, you want to innovate. And those are your three things. So guys, I love that. Thank you, Keith, for sharing it. And I would ask everybody on this call, you know, we're coming into the end of 2019. We're preparing for 2020. And I don't know, there's just an energy about 2020. You know, it's not just another year, guys. I mean, we're not just ending a year, we're ending a decade. We're starting a decade, and it's 2020. It's a big number. So I would just urge everybody, take the time to write down your three. And then I love the fact you know what you got from your wife, you got from, you know, someone that you report to, someone that, you know, is a leader to you. Anybody else come to mind like that you got feedback from, just to give some leadership to everybody else on the call?
Yeah, I mean, I asked my coach, so I asked Bill, and I asked my team members. Outside of that, no, I didn't really, you know, I mean, my wife knows me the best, but we've been together for 16 years. She knows me better than anybody. So, you know, and that was actually a vulnerable moment too. It's kind of cool. So, and then it opened up a whole new conversation, you know, and she's like, well, what do you think my strengths are? And then it was actually a really cool conversation to have. But yeah, no, my wife, my direct leader, my coach, and then I asked my team.
Love that. Love that. So one thing I'm going to insert right now, and I'm going to go do that too. I'm going to do that myself. I'm going to, you know, this weekend, I'm going to ask people around me that question. I saw a presentation. I'm not remembering who it was, but it was really, it'll come to me in a second. Oh, can't remember the guy's name, but it was at the Fairway event that I spoke at last week. And he's the author of Unoffendable. You know, look up the book, Unoffendable. And he told a whole story how he went to people and he asked, like, what can I improve on? And don't just ask, like, hey, what can I improve on, and let it go. He really brought up, and he went deep with a buddy of his. And the way the story went is like, what can I improve on? He had to like really push to get it. And then the guy said, well, you know, you walk fast and you just walk past people a lot. Like because he's like, you know, this guy's a big deal. He's an author. He's a speaker. And, you know, his takeaway, like what can he do better at, was being more present and taking time with the people around him instead of just walking fast and walking past people. So I would just push you guys. That's another one, you know, that I got as a personal takeaway last week at an event that I was at. And, you know, I'm currently working on that myself. So Todd,
there's like a 10-minute Simon Sinek video going around recently. I've seen like 4 or 5 people share it. It's really good. And one of the things he said, and that's just something that I mentally wrote down, is that like when you're a leader, often you'll ask like, how are you doing? And then, but you don't really care about the answer. And so if you're be mindful of what you're doing. And if you ask that question, be prepared to stay and have a conversation with the person if you ask it, because you lose credibility when you ask how you're doing and then walk off. That was a big one.
So I love that. And so, by the way, the way you're asking the question is, what am I good at? Is that what is the?
Oh, when I'm asking someone, yeah, no. What are my 3 strengths? What are the 3 things that Keith does the best?
What a great action plan. I think it's a great action plan. I would tell you that I just did this on my calendar for next year. I just wrote a big no on there as a reminder based on what you just said, Keith, of, hey, what am I not going to do next year, right? A great exercise for us all to do is a keep, start, stop, or a keep, improve, start, stop. What is it I'm doing that I'm doing great at, I should keep doing? What is it I'm doing that I need to stop doing, right? What should I say no to? And then what should I start doing, right? We all have those projects, and I think we all sometimes forget because we don't have on time. First Fridays, to get those things going. But I just put a big no on my calendar. So I'm redoing my new calendar for next year. You can see all these colors, right? Those are all the family things that have gone in there first. And I'm putting events in there in pencil that I may or may not attend, and commitments I've made going in pen, because that's how it's going to be. So think through what Keith just said, right? He's making decisions now on what next year looks like. And I love that word, intentional. And gosh, I think I need some more contagious energy. I got energy, but I don't know that it's contagious. I think, Dave, you got some good contagious energy, but I think Keith's got us beat.
I don't know, man. I think I can compete with Keith. But
all right, good.
Anyways, I get it. Hey,
you know what? The other thing is, like, with these traits, right? So let's just say contagious energy, but the word contagious, right? Be contagious in whatever your strength is, because whatever that strength is, people are attracted to it, right? Whatever Dave, you have a great energy, but you're very clear on kind of your direction and where you're going, and that's contagious. So whatever that strength is, I would argue that strength, if you go all in on it and really bring it out, it's going to be contagious. People are going to want to be around it for whatever that reason is. Like John Maxwell, it's leadership. Like, he is one of the greatest thought leaders of our time. That's contagious, right? Like, I'm not, and this is not a plug on John, but like, I'm not, he's not contagious around health and fitness or whatever, right? He's not running marathons, but I'm attracted to John because he has gone where he is great. And that's why he's contagious.
That's really, really good point. And before we get too far from the point, that what you just made, part of having contagious energy is being clear. Like, you know what winning the day is. You know what winning by noon is. You know what winning the year is. And so on December 10th, guys, 9:00 Pacific, mark your calendars. Todd Bookspan is going to be going through how to plan for 2020 with the Win by Noon Planner. So for those of you that have the Win by Noon Planner, show up. It'll be a good review. Even if you've heard it before, it's a good reminder. And for those of you who don't have it, you'll find out what it's like to, work with Todd, plan for 2020, plan for Q1 of 2020, plan for January of 2020. Mark your calendar, June 10th, 9:00. Did I get that right, Todd? Is that the right date?
June 10th. Let's go January 10th. I think that's the right day.
Oh, wait. Didn't we say it's December 10th, right?
December 10th.
December. Thank you.
Yeah,
all right, let's scratch all that. Just pretend you didn't hear June or just January. December 10th. That's a Tuesday. We're losing.
My ADD kicked in. My
Dave,
ADD kicked in.
You said December 10th.
All right, December 10th. We're going there.
So Todd's ADD kicked in.
But here's the scoop, right? It's not going to be all a Win by Noon sales pitch. It's going to be, how do you plan as you're heading into 2020? So I'm going to take a deep dive into the principles around really becoming a planner and how to actually make sure that you take these ideas that you get week in and week out here in this community and execute on them. And so, certainly I'll talk about the Win by Noon principles, because I think those are critical. However, don't feel like if you're not a Win by Noon user, or you were one and you're not one, or you don't want to be one, you can't be there. I'm going to make sure it's valuable for all of you.
Yeah, well, but here's the deal, Todd. I'm going to push back on that, because, well, obviously you're not going to do Ginsu knife commercial, but I want you to go through like the Win by Noon planner, because whether you use that piece of paper or that app, it's these principles come into play, and you're learning it from a guy that led a branch and built a branch that did 500 loans annually for multiple years. Not branch, a team. The Todd Bookspan team. And so a guy who's coached people, and now a guy that's built a community with thousands of loan officers and realtors that are just serious about planning, time blocking, and recording their activity. So I don't want you, I want you to use the planner. Whether you guys buy it is up to you. I do. All right, so we got 15 minutes left. I'll scan for question. Todd, back to you to continue this conversation, make sure we get everything we can out of Keith.
All right, so Keith, you said that you like to swim upstream, and you said that you're going to be really focused on what you do next year. Is there any secret thing you've got going on that you're willing to share with the community?
Secret thing that I've got going on that I'm willing to share with the community.
Yeah, you can put you on the spot. It's kind of rude to invite you on the call and
everything with the community. Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm willing to share everything with the community. Because everything that I've got, I probably ripped off from somebody else. So it's just, that's, but
We call it swipe and adapt here.
Right, exactly.
It's okay. We all share. That's what this community is about.
My big project is for 2020 is leaning in with valuable content to my targeted audiences. And that's going to be loan officers, realtors, and customers, whether it be current or future. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I'm currently engaging with 3 different brand marketing companies. And I even went to the local college to see if I can find somebody who's really talented that maybe I can bring in kind of content. But I think I've got a pretty good story to tell. I think I'm pretty good on video. I'm comfortable there. I've built a brand in my market already, but I don't see a lot of people in my kind of Tri-County area, which is my focus, that's really like leaning in and leading in that space. So for me, I think that's wide open in my market. And so that's my big project in 2020 is stepping into something that I enjoy doing. It brings me passion and excitement but also something that I think I'm good at that will expand that brand.
That's huge. By the way, I appreciate you sharing.
Love that focus. And guys, here's a push I want to put for all you, because I can tell you right now that is going to be one of the themes of Mortgage Coach as we kick off 2020. And we, help you guys do a better job of marketing yourself. You guys able to see me? My screen went black for a second.
Yeah, good.
We got you.
Okay, so one thing I want to ask you guys all to do, little homework assignment right now. And Keith, I'm going to push you to ask you to do this also. If you look at the article that I wrote with Kristen Messerly in LinkedIn, I just published it yesterday. It's on Facebook, it's on LinkedIn, it's in our group. I want you guys to make a video that's 2 minutes or less. I'm not I'll watch it even if it's more than 2 minutes. If it's more than 3 minutes, I won't watch it, probably. But 2 minutes or less. And I want you to tell your value prop to a consumer on Facebook. So it's Facebook video. I want you to how would you position yourself at the point of sale? I'm currently working with Josh Metal on a value prop video, and I'll just give you guys a hint. It's got a good, strong, story branded headline. And then here's the 3 ways that I do it. And yes, if you're getting advice from me, a total cost analysis is going to be one of those reasons to do business with me. And by the way, but telling that story in a consumer friendly way, the way you would describe a total cost analysis to another loan officer is one way. The way you describe it to a borrower is another way. And the way you describe it to a realtor is another way. So I would love to get a video. I'll watch any of them that are posted in our group. I'd even like to have maybe I'll think of a contest for January, the best mortgage coach, what's your value prop for a borrower video? I'll think of some prize money for for December. But I want to push you guys to do that. And Keith, are you willing to play the game?
I am willing. Yes, I am willing to play the game. I read that article, man, and I want to, if I can, just take it a little bit further and maybe just a slightly different direction with storytelling, if it's all right.
Of course.
Lord, yeah. So we are an experience-based economy. I believe that. And the experience that we provide is what is going to make us referable. And so, yes, we have to be able to tell a great story about who we are, what we do, and why someone would want to work with us. But I think to take it a little bit further is we need to focus on the story that maybe our customer would tell. And so we have to provide such a great experience that when they are telling their story about buying a home, which they will and they do, right? The first-time home buyer talking about taking the first step to say, yes, I want to try this, to having keys in their hand and moving boxes. They're telling their friends and family about what just happened and how it went and about their new home and doing housewarming parties and, all that stuff, right? So the question is the experience that you're going to provide to your customers so amazing that when they're telling that story, they're mentioning you and talking about how awesome you are. And so that's where, for me, that's another focus that I have, is enhancing the experience that our customer has in 2020 so that all they do is rant and rave about us.
So I want to even raise the standard higher. One of the things we talk about is a star moment. Star standing for something they'll always remember. So you need, and that's the other push I have for every loan officer listening to this, is we need to go beyond competing with each other and other loan officers. Like if you want to make 2020 and beyond, like better than your last 10 years of the business, you need to compete with every financial planner, every CPA, so that when you have that consultation with the borrower, they're like, holy, you know what? That's the best conversation I've ever had about building wealth. Like better than any life insurance salesperson, better than any financial planner, better than any CPA. And you taught them something they'll always remember. Like that, and that was one of my takeaways from Story Brand and Donald Miller is, you know, 4th grade is better than 8th grade level communication because it's easier to read and it's more memorable. So, you know, be memorable, guys. Love that, Keith. Dude, you didn't take it a different direction. That was awesome.
Thanks, man. Hey, there's a really good video to watch that's kind of firing me up in this direction. Jay O'Brien's a realtor, and he does like a 12-minute talk at Inman, and it's called I think it's called like 7-star service in a 3-star industry. And I'm mimicking everything that he is doing, and he does, you know, like, you know, 3-4 million plus stuff down in, you know, in SoCal. But all the little touches that he's doing with his customers to make sure that they remember him, it's amazing. And so I recommend everybody checks that out. Jay O'Brien, he's really.
Would you mind sharing a link in our Facebook group? So
I will do that.
Guys, if you were watching this in Facebook on live, there'll be a link in comments.
Well,
and if you're on Zoom, there'll be a link in comments.
Let me take it up one notch. Bill Hart interviewed him on All In. So let's go back to my original ask from here. So, you know, if you don't want to watch me on All In, watch that Jay O'Brien interview. It's really, really good, what he does. And Bill does a great job in a short period of time of helping him. But watch the video too, because that's what got Bill going.
It's nailed.
Todd, would you do me a favor and put a link to both yours in the group comments after this call and a separate comment for this other dude?
Yep, I'm on it.
All right, guys. So, hey, we're right here, man. We're giving you resources. Take it to the next level. If you have questions, we got 8 minutes left. So, Keith, I'm going to let Todd ask the last question, but I would just love, like, is there something we haven't asked you yet, or, you know, just you get a lot of value from this community. I see you active in groups, you watch content, but, you know, coming into the end of the year, you just had this experience. Is there anything you just want to say from your heart to the mortgage coach community, you know, being a special leader today? Anything on your heart, man?
Man, like we are in a ridiculous business. Like I think about it, the mortgage industry is like this little corner of the earth that like nobody really knows about, and it just changes lives. I mean, it's like you can be an entrepreneur, you can do whatever you want. Like there is no floor in this industry, but there's no ceiling, and it's special. And so I think sometimes that we take it for granted. And we don't take the time to invest in ourselves, or, you know, read our guidelines, or being like my buddy's a dentist, right? And, you know, we went on a vacation, and he's bringing like his medical books because he has to study and learn so that he doesn't, like, you know, hurt somebody significantly. And, you know, we have the opportunity in this business to make similar income, but yet I think often we're not taking the time to really make ourselves that much better and really being the expert, because when we're the expert, people will come, they want to be around you, you add value, you can really make a difference in people's lives. And so I think, like, as we look at, and that is where, like, you know, I can't compete with Quicken, but Quicken can compete with me locally in my community. But to do that, I have to be the best in my community to really win. And so just taking the time as you look into 2020 and like, what can you do to be the absolute best originator? Because the sky is the limit. Like you can do some really amazing stuff in this industry if you just go grab it.
I love that.
Right.
That's why you have contagious energy.
That was serious contagious energy. So I think we got to come up, Keith, with a couple of action plans for this crew. Like if they want to be that expert, they want to add that value. What would you encourage someone to do for the next hour when they get off of this webinar to implement to get a jump on 2020?
Well, I mean, there's little thing like, dude, you know these old school MRI books?
Oh yeah, my wife has those on her desk.
Right? But like, how many people actually take the time to read them? you know, we're mortgage folks, and people call us with scenarios. Like, why aren't you the guy that everybody comes to when there's a challenging transaction and you're the fixer? Right? Like I think just as small as that is taking, you know, 10, 20 minutes a day to read guidelines. It's so small, but I think that makes you tremendously impactful in your business.
I'm laughing because Ken Perry just did CE. A couple companies were in our branch doing it, and all of our loan officers. And one of the things that he made everyone do was go out and do research on non-traditional mortgages. It had to be VA, USDA, or FHA, and pull out a guideline that nobody in the room would know. And so it was funny to hear people come up with these things about these loans that these people in this room were supposed to be experts on that they didn't know because they spent the 8 or 10 minutes that Ken made them do that. So quick plug for Ken Perry and the Knowledge Group. If you haven't done your CE yet, they've got online CE for all states, and it's totally worth your while.
Absolutely. You guys nails. They put out some pretty awesome videos too.
Yeah, you should subscribe. Everyone should watch Ken's stuff, but you know, we fly him in every year and have him do live training. So if you're looking for a team building event, you're looking for making your CE a little bit more fun, you know, there's no doubt that that's worthwhile. But I know he's hung up his boots for the year on teaching it live, but the online stuff is still available. So that's my plug there. So I love that idea of just getting out there and getting busy to make yourself better. I guess kind of as we sort of close it up here, right, Dave, we've talked about a lot today. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about, you know, Keith's First Fridays. I think there's so many ways we can close this out. I want to close it out by saying, you know, first off, thanks to you, Keith, for jumping on so fast, right? I saw your post and I reached out and said, gosh, we'd love to have you on. You're like, I'm in. So I'm super grateful for that. Super grateful for what you've added. You know, I know Dave already asked you, well, hey, what else is it that you want to add here? But I think I'd love, instead of me giving the final action plan, I already got you to give a little one on jump in and learn some guidelines and study for 10 minutes a day. But why don't you kind of close us out and get this group a little motivated with some of that contagious energy as we wrap up a week and head into Thanksgiving.
I think a really simple thing that you can do right now to go get business and establish meaningful relationships with real estate agents is go nail your single page business plan, and then go meet with every single one of your realtors and sit down with them and have them do their business plan. You copy it, make it pretty, laminate it, throw it in a frame, give it to them, but like memorialize that. And then this is the difference is, you know, we have loan officers. I talk to realtors all the time. They're like, man, I get called 10 times a day from loan officers and they're asking for business. Do not call and ask for business. Call and ask, how are you doing on the plans that you set forth and the business plan that we put together 2, 3, 4 weeks ago? Be the person, like find a need and fill it with your realtors, and they're going to love you for life and send you all their referrals. And it's so simple. You just got to go do it.
Oh, I so love that. All right. So here's my commitment to you guys. I already mentioned it earlier. I'm going to put it on my calendar for noon Pacific time on Monday, the 25th. So next Monday, I will teach a webinar on how to do what Keith just said with your realtors, so that you guys can actually execute on it. So I'll get it posted up here after the call gets done. I got to go create the webinar in Zoom, but I'll post it up in here Monday noon PST. If you think that idea of Keith's was great, as I do, I'll teach you how to do it, because I think that's probably the hang up for a lot of you. All right, Mr. Savage, come back on. Let's hear you say some goodbyes as well.
All right. So first of all, guys, this was an awesome call. Keith, you killed it with leadership, influence, contagious energy. Love this. You know, here's the deal, guys. We can't do it alone. We got to do it as a community. So we hit the milestone of 8,000 members of the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind. And I'm just super proud of the community, not for the number of people, but for the quality of people. And when I think of quality, I don't think of just like your production. I mean, we brag all the time that 34% of the top loan officers that close over 100 loans are customers. But I'm just proud of the people that are, you know, curious about how to do it better. They're showing up. You're engaging with us in our communities. So I just want to say thank you. You know, we're coming into Thanksgiving, and thank you for everybody that watches our content on YouTube. Thank you for everybody that connects with us in this Facebook group, Mortgage Coach Productivity. And thanks for everybody that connects with us on LinkedIn. So thanks, guys. Have an awesome weekend. I won't see you before Thanksgiving. So kill it. Have a great Thanksgiving. Be present for your family. And Todd, thank you, brother.
Man, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Grateful for you. Grateful for your time, Keith. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Later, everybody.
I'm out.